Alright, and welcome to this lesson where we're going to take a look at developing the events page. So I want to focus my attention on the event underscore page directory, and inside of there we have the SCSS file that's being converted to the CSS file, and we also have the PHP file as well. Also in this directory we have the event.png file, and this is basically a picture of the person in question, and then also we have the event underscore image.png, which is the banner image for the event. So if we actually take a look at this now inside of Photoshop, what you'll notice is we have the main image banner, and also what I want to do is actually include a little paragraph about the event down below, not just have the comment straight away, and so we'll add that in later. But you'll notice that all these little squares right here are going to represent the event.png image, which is the person in question. And so once we have all of that, what we can do now is take a look at the markup that's needed to create this page. So now what I want to do is take a look at the PHP file, and first of all we need to make sure that we have something to target, for example an ID, that reflects what page we actually want to change the styles for. So again, I'm just going to put an ID on the HTML tag, and it's going to be event P. And then once I've done that, below the actual header, what I want to do is again create our basic template for our two-column layout. So it's going to be a div with the ID of col2, and then inside of there you're going to have a div element that's going to contain the left hand side navigation, so that's going to have the ID of menu underscore side, and inside of there we want an anchor with the ID of side underscore open. And so what this will do is, again, it's only going to be visible on the mobile version of this page, and it's going to open and close the div with the ID of submenu. But inside of here we want the span, and it's going to have the semicolon inside of there, which is going to give the calendar icon when we use the Liger font. And then also inside of there I want to write attendees. And then what I want to do is create the div that's going to be toggled open and closed by that anchor, and that again is going to have the ID of submenu. And then inside of there what we want to do is start to put in the content for our side menu, so you have the add me and all these anchors down here. So what I'm going to do is put in the anchor that's going to have a span inside of it, and the span is going to be the icon. So we want this little plus icon right here. Again, it's using the Liger font, and then I'm just going to put the text add me. And then underneath that anchor, what I want to do is create another anchor, and this is just going to be the regular anchor that you see, that's right here, and it's going to have the image of the profile of the person that's in question, and the name, and when they were added. And so inside of that anchor, I first of all want to have the image, which is going to be the event.png image, which is a template image for the profile picture, and the alt is going to be the person's name. And then below that image we're going to have a paragraph, and first of all we're going to have the strong text, the nice bold text, which is the person's name, and then we're going to have a line break, and then we're going to have the text of when they were added, so 1 hour ago. And so once I've done that, we can then take a look at putting in the other section right here, because we have the menu side, but below there I want to create another div, and this again is going to hold the main content. We're not going to focus on that right now, so just put in some content right there so that it recognizes that this is in fact a table cell as well, and hit refresh. So now we can actually look at styling up the side menu first of all, and then move on to the main content. So now let's move over to the SCSS file. And so what I want to do first of all is I want to take a look at this brown color right here that isn't in our color scheme, and it's specific to this page, and it's the light brown color. So I'm going to copy the hex value out, and then we're going to store it inside of a variable. So I'm just going to say light brown, and then I'm going to assign it the value. Then the next thing I want to do is I want to make sure that this text and these anchors right here are selectable, because currently they're not, and that's again because the col2 is behind the body. So we want to avoid that at all costs, and we want to limit the body's height and the HTML as well to the height of the header, and that way everything will be selectable, and of course everything that's outside of it will still be visible, so that's absolutely fine. So what I want to do is target event P. I also want to target event P again, and I want to target the body element. So I'm targeting the HTML and the body element of this page, and I'm going to set the height to 50 pixels. And that way everything now becomes selectable. Just like so, you can see that my cursor changes right there on the anchors, and also I can select the text. So the next thing I need to do is take a look at the menu side right here and get this styled up. So again, we're going to target that ID event P, and then we're going to target the ID menu underscore side. And then in there, what we want to do is limit the width to 223 pixels. We also want to change the background color to the cream color, and then also what I want to do is use my mixins, which is going to be the box shadow. And right here what I want to do is say I want this to be an inset shadow, because you can see right here that we do have this shadow, and even if we put the shadow on the actual main content area, yes, it will cast a shadow right here, but what it won't do is for the child elements right here that have solid background colors, it'll just take over that shadow. And it's the same thing with this as well, so the only reason why I'm doing it this way is because at least all the code relates to the side menu. So that's why I'm doing it this way. So we're going to say -2 pixels on the x-axis, which is going to move the shadow over to the right, because what you're doing is when you set a negative number on the x-axis, it's going over to the right, and a positive number goes over to the left. And so obviously we need a shadow on the right, so I'm setting this to -2 pixels, 0 pixels on the y-axis, 3 pixels blur, and then I'm going to set the color value to RGBA, and it's going to be black, and it's going to be 0.3 or 30% alpha transparent. So when I do that, you can save this now, hit refresh, and now I want to focus on styling up the anchors, and they do have some general styles that need to be shared, and then I can take a look at targeting the first child and getting that styled up. So let's first of all take a look at all those anchors. So let's target the ID event P, which is the HTML element. Then we're going to target the sub menu where all of our anchors reside, and then we're going to target all the anchors that are inside of there. So what I want to do first of all is make sure that these anchors can have mass. So I'm going to display them as a table. The reason why I'm going to do that is because you can see this text right here is aligned vertically to the image. So this is actually going to be displayed as a table cell. And so the main parent, I want it to display as a table, so the table cell displays correctly. And I also want to set this to float to the left, because the image that's inside of the anchor will have to float to the left as well. We want to make sure that we get the correct wrapping around the child element. And then also I want to set the width to 100%. Then also we want to set the border bottom. Now this isn't the same for the top anchor, but for all the other anchors they do have a border bottom on here. So let's go ahead and put that in. So the border bottom is going to be 1 pixel solid, and the color is going to be light gray. Then also what we have is the font color. So the font color is going to be text 3, and then also we're going to have the transition mix-in included in here. So I'm going to say @include transition, and we want to transition all the available CSS properties in 0.3 of a second or 300 milliseconds. And so that will allow me to animate the hover state. So I can just save this real quick and hit refresh. And now you'll notice that we have some basic styling in here. But now let's focus our attention on that first anchor and style that up. So what I'm going to do is I'm just simply going to copy this out, which is targeting currently all the anchors that are inside of the submenu div. But then what I want to do is use the pseudo selector first-child, and so that will only target that first anchor child element. So I'm going to set the line height to 60 pixels, that way it's going to align the text vertically in the center, and then we can simply set the text alignment to the center to align the text horizontally. So now we've got the text centered correctly. What I want to do now is get rid of the border bottom, so I'm going to set the border bottom to none. Then also I'm going to change the background color, which as you know is going to be the light brown background color. And then also we have the font color, so that's going to be set to text 2, which is the white text color. And then what we want is the box shadow, because if I just save this real quick and hit refresh, you'll notice that it sort of covers over the shadow. So that's actually going to be problematic. So what I'm going to do is simply copy this out and paste this in, and that way we get our shadow back. Now after that, what I want to do is take a look at the span that is nested inside of that anchor that is the first child. So let's copy that out, and I want to now target the span that is inside of the first anchor in the submenu. So once I've done that, what I can do is set the font family to Liger, and I'll set the margin right to, let's say, 5 pixels. That should do the trick. So go ahead and save it, hit refresh, and there we go. Now we have the Add Me button. So now we can start to focus on the other anchors and also the hover state as well, because currently there is no hover state. So therefore what we're going to do is copy this selector out right here and paste this down below, and then we're going to say when any anchor is hovered over in the submenu, we can change the background color to yellow, and then also we can change the font color to text 1, which will be the brown text color. And currently with our anchors, obviously they're transparent, but when they hover over the anchor, it's going to have a solid background. So what we need to do is again put in our box shadow right here, and also what I want to do is double check this transition mixing right here, because it says 0.3, but we need to put the S in there, so it's 0.3 of a second. So now our transition will work. I can save that, hit refresh, and now we get that nice animation. Now the next thing I want to do is take a look at this image, and I want to tell it to float to the left, and that way the content can go to the right of the image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to target the submenu for this particular page, and of course they are the only image elements that reside inside of the submenu, so I don't have to be very specific. And once I've done that, I can just then tell it to float to the left, and the content will go to the right of it. So now let's style up that paragraph right there so that the text is aligned correctly. So again, I can target the submenu for the current page, and then I can take a look at all the paragraph elements. And what I want to do is display as a table cell. That is why I told the anchor, which is the parent, to display as a table. And that way what we can do is set the vertical align to a middle, and that way it will center this up vertically. And then I want to set the line height to 160%, so we get spacing between the lines. Then also I want to set the font size to 13 pixels, and then we want the padding to be 15 pixels around every single edge. If we save that now and we hit refresh, you'll notice that what we have is this right here, where our text is aligned correctly. Now the other thing that we need to factor in is when we go to the mobile version, which you can see here we are sort of going into that mobile version. The only problem is that we're not getting the full width right here. It's still staying the same width, and again that's because we actually overpowered it right here with this selector. So what I need to do is copy this selector out and then go to the import.scss file, scroll down to where you have the media query, and right here with this selector, which is targeting the menu side and setting the width, again it's being overpowered, so what we need to do is add to this selector. We want to target the HTML element, check to make sure it has the ID event P, and then we're going to target the menu side. And so when I do that, you can just save this now, and don't forget you need to save a new version of your event page.scss file, so go ahead and do that, and then it will make those changes and you will have a width of 100%. Now the only other thing that I want to do is take a look at this paragraph right here and make sure that when we go to the mobile version the text goes over to the left edge. So what I'm going to do is simply copy out the media query from the import.scss file, because now we want to apply styles that are specific to the event page. So we're going to paste that media query into the event page.scss file, and then we want to target that paragraph element, and then what we want to do is set the width to 100%. And just as a precursor, you may get a margin on here, so we want to make sure that the margin is set to 0. So I'm just going to save that right now, and then I simply want to hit refresh. And so now you'll notice that the text has gone all the way over to the left edge. So thank you for joining me in this lesson, and please join me in the next lesson where we'll continue on developing the event page.